During last week's General Committee meeting at the Barrie City Hall, various operational and capital budget items were discussed. During the operational budget discussions, funding for various temporary staff positions was addressed. During the discussion on tree and grass maintenance, Mayor Alex Nuttall suggested postponing part of the agenda to a future meeting while expressing concerns about the inefficiencies in grass cutting in Barrie.
The math and the data don't add up, right? We haven't increased the grass to cut, but we've increased the length of time it takes to cut. We haven't decreased the staff, so something doesn't make sense. Is it students? Is it contractors? Is it like just something doesn't add up? And it may just be that we're less productive than we were when it comes to our summer part-time casual staff. And that, I think, while we wouldn't view that as an acceptable answer, at least it's an answer. I just don't understand it right now, Councillor Harvey.
I am sensing you want me to withdraw the amendment, which I am good with, and hopefully we don't get into a 2-hour dialogue next week too, but I will withdraw the amendment and let's move on because we're already at 9 o'clock.
During the capital budget discussion, Ward 10 Councillor Bryn Hamilton proposed several amendments to increase and decrease funding for various projects. Intense discussion among councillors focused on the elimination of funding for solar panel installation, a new splash pad, and City Hall development. Hamilton argued for eliminating the $1.27 million funding for solar panel installation.
Annual basis. So considering the lifespan of the panels, I just didn't see this being financially viable for us to pursue.
Ward 3 Councillor Anne-Marie Kungal opposed the cut, citing the project's electrical savings of $3.3 million over 25 years.
The electrical savings being $3.3 million over the lifespan of 25 years, plus a 3% annual utility escalation, that we'd see a break even or positive cash flow at year 13 and a return on investment of 121%. So I wouldn't mind digging into a little bit more around that and appreciate around the facility and it not being ours. So
Rick Hughes, Director of Corporate Facilities, confirmed these benefits.
So our break-even point is about 13 years, so it's a 13-year payback for these. The lifespan of these panels is, the industry standard is 25 to 30 years. So we use 25 years for our analysis. The reality is they're not going to stop working at 25 years. You know, over the course of time, the output does go down. So at a certain point, they'll either fail or the output will get low enough, and the new technology 25 years out, I don't know what it looks like, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot better than what we've got today. It'll just make sense financially to replace them. The one comment I would like to make is this is a city building. The county had partial ownership in it, so any savings on the utility side, we provide the Barrie Police with the utility budget, and we provide the county of Simcoe with the utility budget. So it's not like they're going to tell us this is what we're going to pay for utilities. We tell them what it's going to cost.
thank you, Mr. Hughes. I appreciate that. So I won't be supporting the amendment as it's presented.
The council decided not to reduce the funding and to postpone the item until the next budget, as the staff is still working on details of the project. In another matter, Hamilton proposed the immediate repair of the splash pad at Heritage Park while deferring other changes. The proposal was passed with support from Mayor Alex Nuttall. The council also decided to move ahead with the renovation of Barrie City Hall at 70 Collier Street. The $6.9 million redevelopment project aims to increase occupancy and make more efficient use of each floor to accommodate the city's anticipated growth in staff and residents. 5 years back, in 2018, the City Council considered an expansion and renovation costing a total of $88 million. Please follow the timestamp to jump to the relevant section of the video.
Going to move to another big ticket item, which is our budget that was held by Councillor Harvey. So Councillor Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put it on the floor as printed, and I do have 2 amendments. Now, I guess just to kind of sort out how you would like this to occur, will we do operational first and then do capital, or do you want it all blended together? What's your preference?
I think I'd prefer to finish out the operating budget items and then move on to the capital budget out after that, if that's okay with members of committee. So we'll start there.
Great, thank you. So I do have 2 amendments. The first one, that the following be added to paragraph 1. that new investment and service recommendation form 2852, transportation engineer on page 189 be deleted, but the new tax levy funding of $159,542 be maintained and transferred to the tax rate stabilization reserve.
And so I'm at face value of it, not aligned to it. So I'd love to have more conversation about some of the rationale. I'm still seeing it as the justification about the number of development applications continuing to increase, forecasted work associated with Bill 109, and really this key component around how we facilitate the acquisition of property and doing that appropriately. So would love to open up some conversations if you can expand around if we're still going to take the money from a tax levy but nestle into, I know reserves are very, very low, versus what I would see to be a reduction of service or compromising, where we are going to growth, not aligning resources to pressure areas. So can you share a little bit more, and then I might have some questions for staff. Councillor Harvey.
Sure, yeah. Obviously you did highlight that our tax stabilization reserve is extremely low. And obviously this is one little piece to try and help stabilize that a little bit better. But also, too, this position's been a temporary position already. We all know that there's funding available built within the capital budget every year that permits the CAO at his discretion to bring on these temporary positions. And there's more than enough room within that I can see that if the CAO continues to wish to keep this as a temporary full-time position, that there's more than enough room to be able to complete that if it is such a high priority to be able to supplement with the volume coming in. I'm not discrediting the fact that the volume has actually increased over the last few years, but also too, it's that fine balance. We've got that stabilization reserve that is in a real crucial point that we got to start topping up, and this is one way to start helping top that up. But also too, there is still that room to be able to continue this position if the CAO so wishes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. So my next question, I'll redirect to staff, because we did have really great lengthy conversation last meeting. And for me, I think there's still opportunity to clarify what is the lived reality when we talk about temporary positions. So we know we've historically asked staff to gap. We had some back and forth about trying to, I think, dig into clarity about how are temporary positions funded and what's happening, and is this a service reduction? If we actually take it off the table, what's the impact? And I'd like some validation that there is money to then find the needs to do this work if it isn't continued as a temporary position. And so I guess I would just redirect to CEO Prowse. Is there any, or to Mr. Miller, if it's more to a finance question, is there anything we're not appreciating when we're talking about temporary positions that are coming forward, about how they are managed internally? So my assumption, though, in having other conversations is we don't support this continuing. It's a service reduction. There is no money to find the replacement of the effort of this work in the next calendar year.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle and members of committee. While it is true that there is often money in the budget, temporary positions are typically funded from a number of sources. It could be projects, it could be absences, it could be grants from other levels of government. I think it would be an error for council to assume that we simply can continue with this position if council doesn't provide funding for it, because as part of that, council is saying that that position is not a priority of this council. The function of getting development applications done may necessitate us bringing in some version of that temporary employee again. It may not be for a full year. Mr. Anderson, sitting beside me, probably will explain to me all of the different draws he's got on his budget that will prevent him from funding that position. Now, having said that, as council should be well aware, Bill 109 from the province has attached financial penalties to municipalities for not meeting timelines. So I can assure you your management team will take a look at that and take a look at what is the risk, what is the reward, and what is the viability of that position. I think clearly from the record of work and the increasing work and applications, somebody has to be doing that type of work. I think the challenge for all of us is how do we fund that? So to answer your question, Councillor Kungle, we would look to have that work continue in some capacity, but to pretend that there will be no service level impact, I think would probably be disingenuous. We will certainly do our best to manage it under total budget management if that's Council's decision.
Thank you. I appreciate that, CEO Prowse. I think for me, I have the information I need. If I think members of council need more clarity on aspects tied to temporary and not an impact, I can't support the amendment. I would like to see the actual commitment to these positions. So,
thanks, Councillor. Quickly, Mr. Prowse, quickly on that item. So it was mentioned that there was $160,000 for this position related to development applications. Is that correct? This is related to development applications?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall, that's part of the work, yes.
Okay. So there's $160,000 on the floor to be taxed to the people of Barrie related to development applications in the south end of Barrie, which will facilitate new housing. Is that correct?
That is much of the work, as I understand it, Mayor Nuttall, yes.
Okay. So we're going back to people to say, please give us $160,000 so that we can hire somebody to help developers get their applications through faster, to help someone else move to the city of Barrie. That's what this is. And I'm not saying it's not needed, but I think we should actually all be on the same page of what is being discussed and where the dollars are coming from in order to facilitate this. We all sit and complain every time the province brings 23-109 that the taxpayer is going to pick up the bill for developers. And that's what's being proposed with this position, that the taxpayer pick up the bill for developers. Just so everybody's on the same page of what's being voted on here. You know, we get a lot of pressure from the provincial and federal governments right now. In fact, we have been very effective on the provincial level. We had conversations over the last couple of days with the federal folks as well, and I think we've been very effective there. We had the former housing minister in town twice. We had 2 sets of delegation meetings with the housing minister on top of that on the federal level. And so I think we've been very effective at being in the conversation by the decision makers regarding housing at those levels. But this started because, this position literally started because there was a provincial grant that's now disappeared, right? Whether it's disappeared as a whole or it's disappeared for us, it's no longer something we're tapping into. And I think for me, what I would like to see over the next little while is when we get those funding pieces, and the CEO is actually, to be fair to him, he's actually said this to me, like, you know, when we get those funding sources we know are coming, we may have to make some decisions on staffing up to meet the commitments we've made inside of the applications for the funding themselves. In fact, the funding applications, I think, outline positions that we need to hire in order to meet the requirements of those applications. And so this piecemeal one-off staff member versus the global plan, for me, like, I want to see the global plan funded and then bring those dollars into the equation and then make these types of long-term decisions. But imagine the federal government, minority government falls tomorrow, new regime comes in, and, you know, the NDP forms a government, they decide that they don't want to go with that program, they want to go with something else. You know, we've now just hired a one-off, we haven't secured any funding, we don't have anything long-term and sustainable. The province we haven't received a dollar from yet. We're arguing over what the actual outcomes are for the city of Barrie in terms of new housing. And therefore, there's a whole lot of questionable funding at the moment related to this specific area of the corporation in the city of Barrie, which we've been so incredibly effective of and been given praise by the provincial government for. So I think there's a lot going on. It's hard to parse it down into one position of $160,000, but for me, I want the global conversation, the long-term conversation that includes the feds and the province recognizing the city, not just by saying we're doing a great job, but by writing the checks that we've seen others receive. Did you have any more questions on? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and we will call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment by Councillor Harvey? All those opposed? And it passes. I'll now go back to any amendments on the floor. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I've got one more. That the following be added to paragraph 1, that only the gardener position be approved as part of the new investment and service recommendation, Form 2828, Parks, Horticulture, and Forestry staff, page 191, at a budget amount of $102,303 funded from the tax levy, and B, that $34,000 be added to the operation department's overall budget for seasonal and temporary staff funded from the tax levy, and C, that the remaining tax levy funding amount of $173,966 be approved and transferred to the tax rate stabilization reserve, and also that the following be added to paragraph 9, that the capital costs identified in capital project RFP 1179, Parks and Forestry Operation New Fleet Service Growth for the years 24 and 25 be deleted.
Do that. You're saying the contractors do the boulevards, not the parks and the fields.
The contractors that we have do just a number of boulevards. You know, if we have a side lot boulevard complaint, we've started contracting that out now. So they do minimal work for us.
But if we've gone from 5 days to 9 days, we've essentially doubled the time it takes to go out and cut the grass. And we haven't had a reduction in staff. And I'm really struggling. Like, Ward 10 would be the highest growth area of the city over the past decade. I'm thinking about every park in Ward 10. I was councillor when every single one of those parks was built. There hasn't been a park in Ward 10 since then, unless it's in the new annexation area. Queensway Park was built, Coronation Park, Sandringham Park, Loyalist Park. So we've had a decrease in service from 5 days to 9 days to cut grass. We haven't decreased staff. We haven't increased the amount of grass to cut. So where's the loss of productivity?
Your Worship and members of the committee. So for example, what happens is the grass gets really long. You know, the ideal level for grass to avoid weed growth, et cetera, is about 3 inches. Once the grass starts getting really long, you know if you're cutting your own grass, you get the big clumps, you get piles of grass, and it chokes out your grass. So once you start losing the field or the grass, it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to bring it back. So we don't have staff that can go out and rake the grass after we cut it, once it gets really long. So
I guess I'm just a little confused, and I would like more information for next Wednesday. I don't think we're going to get anywhere on this tonight. And I think maybe, so first of all, I think this amendment will pass right now. Just my guesstimate would be a pass. Councillor Harvey, I'm still going to ask if it's okay with you to withdraw, because I actually don't understand what's happening. Like, I don't understand, none of the math and the data don't add up, right? We haven't increased the grass to cut, but we've increased the length of time it takes to cut. We haven't decreased the staff, so something doesn't make sense. Is it students? Is it contractors? Is it, like, just something doesn't add up? And it may just be that we're less productive than we were when it comes to our summer part-time casual staff. And that, I think, while we wouldn't view that as an acceptable answer, at least it's an answer. I just don't understand it right now, Councillor Harvey.
I am sensing you want me to withdraw the amendment, which I am good with, and hopefully we don't get into a 2-hour dialogue next week too, but I will withdraw the amendment, and let's move on, because we're already at 9 o'clock.
Into the weeds, if you would.
Into the weeds. That is withdrawn. And Mr. CEO, if you can provide maybe an interim memo through the week, kind of delineating where the reductions in service have come from, that therefore have driven the increase in need for full-time staff.
Happy to do that, Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you. Next amendment. Any other operating budget amendments? Seeing none, Councillor Hamilton, I'll go to you if that's okay.
Sure, and thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall. We're on capital amendments now, is that, okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I've got a couple, so fingers crossed they go quickly.
Councillor Hamilton, you have the floor, so I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Nuttall. On to the next one, to add the following to paragraph 9, that project FC 1312 EMS campus solar panel PV installation, the amount of $1.275 million on page 85 be deleted. And again, I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Again, this one, I applaud the intent and desire to generate renewable energy, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, I should say. For me on this one, the return on investment just didn't add up, considering the $1.5 million investment, and in the intake form it quoted $80,000 reduction in operating costs on an annual basis. So considering the lifespan of the panels, I just didn't see this being financially viable for us to pursue. In addition to that, I did find out too that this building, the EMS campus, is a county building and Barrie Police Services building, so I can't imagine that any costs that are recouped would actually come back to us anyway. So for those reasons, I'm putting forward to delete this.
Motions on the floor. All those in terms of questions or comments? Councillor Congo.
Thank you, and I appreciate the work that you did, Councillor Hamilton, bringing this forward. I still saw long-term that it works. I just want to check with staff, like from a financial. So what I read back was the electrical savings being $3.3 million over the lifespan of 25 years, plus a 3% annual utility escalation, that we'd see a break-even or positive cash flow at year 13, and a return on investment of 121%. So I wouldn't mind digging into a little bit more around that, and appreciate around the facility and it not being ours. So I would like to open the floor just to staff, if staff could, if you want to shine any more light on this, knowing that this is on the table to be removed.
Ms. McAlpine, your light's on.
Everybody's still on break.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Kungle. Mr. Hughes provided some information earlier today, and would be happy to provide, to confirm any details.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Kungle. You're correct. Those numbers that we provided were provided earlier on today. So our break-even point is about 13 years. So it's a 13-year payback for these. The lifespan of these panels is industry standard is 25 to 30 years. So we use 25 years for our analysis. The reality is they're not going to stop working at 25 years. You know, over the course of time, the output does go down. So at a certain point, they'll either fail or the output will get low enough, and the new technology 25 years out, I don't know what it looks like, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot better than what we've got today. It'll just make sense financially to replace them. The one comment I would like to make is this is a city building. The county had partial ownership in it, so any savings on the utility side, we provide the Barrie Police with the utility budget, and we provide the county of Simcoe with the utility budget. So it's not like they're going to tell us this is what we're going to pay for utilities. We tell them what it's going to cost.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I appreciate that. So I won't be supporting the amendment as it's presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? I'm going to start with Councillor Morales. I'm going to go to Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So, Mr. Pugh's follow-up, thank you for those answers and great questions, Councillor Congo. So, we tell county operator, we tell them this is what what we have calculated as a reasonable cost to your hydro utility. So if we do that and this investment goes through, would we then proportionally reduce the allowable hydro cost that is purchased from the grid and not generated from the solar panels proportionally?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Morales, if I understand the question, I think rephrasing it a little bit, you're wondering if the city would get all the savings?
Yes.
That's not the way the building is wired now. I suppose it could be if that's the desire of council. What we do, we provide an estimate of what it's going to cost. There is a true-up at the end of the year, so we reconcile the accounts between the county, police, fire, actually for a little portion of the building. So as it is, we let them know what it is. They would benefit from the savings, and then they would bill us 25% less because we pay 25% of their bill anyways as part of the city.
So while it's, and a follow-up, Mayor Nuttall, so what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, so while we might not have like a smart meter that can, like, to the penny, rejig the cost, realign the cost of the purchased hydro proportionally to the on-site, not generated, but solar captured hydro. So while we don't have currently a way to do that down to the number, we as staff can get to an approximate number, and then that percentage comes back to the city.
Through your worship to Councilor Morales, yeah, I believe that's doable, yes.
Okay. I'm pro-environment. This is a great initiative. The updated numbers from 4:27 p.m. make sense. And again, I know it's been said, but I'm going to say it again. We all have in front of us first year savings of $103,000 per year. Cumulative over its projected lifespan can be more, can be less. That can go either way, especially if we get like that hailstorm we got like 5 years ago. I'm sure that can be concerning, but projected 3.3 million. And the break even, this is the key number. If you want to put the environment thing aside, projected break even at year 13, and after that, positive cash flow and ROI of approximately 121. Those numbers are comfortable for me, so that's why I kept asking the question about, yes, it's good for the environment and we want savings, period, but is the city of Barrie realizing these savings, or are we essentially indirectly realizing them for the county and police? So I guess the answers that you gave me, Mr. Hughes, give me a little more comfort in supporting the original ask. However, I know other members have other questions, and I'll kind of listen to those comments.
Thanks, Councilor Morales. And before Councilor Harvey, I asked him if I could just ask a question. Mr. Hughes, I love the enthusiasm for this, right? I really do. In my previous career, if I went to my boss and said, here's the business case, and he said, I've got questions on the business case, whether it's legit or not, and I came back and said, it's actually 25% better than I said it was, he would say, what changed? And I don't understand what changed between the budget and 427. The difference between a 16-year ROI and a 13-year ROI. Was it uber conservative inside of the original business plan? Like, what's the difference?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the actual method that we're using has changed. So this is a multi-year project. It actually started in 2023. So we have funding already in 2023. At the time the budget was put together, this budget submission was put together, which was May of 2023. This was quite a while ago. We were expecting to put a roof-mounted solar array on top of the building. After we put this budget submission together, our consultants, we hired consultants, the consultants came back and said, you know what, if you do a ground-based solar installation, it's not only more cost-effective to do, but you actually get more output from the ground-based solar array. So it's a better business case because it's a different solution. So what has changed? What we're doing has changed. The outcome, we're still generating power. We're generating more power, a little bit cheaper.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Actually, Mr. Hughes just answered one of my questions because I was going to ask some roof questions, but apparently I don't need to ask any roof questions now. But I'm just trying to understand, like, how did the numbers change from what's in the binder to what was on the Q&As that we got back? Because there's quite a variable there from 80 plus K a year to 103, 105, something like that off the top of my head with the new numbers.
Through your worship to Councillor Harvey. So the initial numbers that we got were presented to us by the consultant that worked on our community energy and greenhouse gas study. So it was a high level based on what we had. The revised number is what we got from the consultant that we actually hired to do the design. So one was high level as part of a program, one was very specific as part of the solar installation at this facility.
So just a follow-up to that, and maybe to refresh my memory, and probably a few people around this table too. So obviously we're already into this for 225K. What exactly did we get for that 225K?
So we haven't spent all the 225K yet, but the first part of this work, the work that we're doing now, is for the consulting. So for the engineers to come in, the consultant that said, you know, you've got a mounting location on the roof, to answer the question that you didn't ask. The building was actually built for that. They came back out and said, you've got that, but you've got a big backyard and you've got a perfect location to put something, so put it over there. So that's part of what they've done. They're actually designing the array itself, so what it would look like. So at the end of the day, if council decides not to go ahead with this or to defer it, we'll have a design, we just won't be able to install it.
And just a follow-up, of the 225, how much would have been used, just so I can understand how deep we're already into this?
Through your worship, Councillor Harvey, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't know.
Okay. I do appreciate, like, I mean, obviously we want to try and go as green as we can. I get that piece of it. I'm not quite convinced that from my knowledge about solar panels lasting 30 years as a general rule, and obviously their outputs are dramatically reduced at the end of life. So I don't believe that our maintaining that level of income every year is going to be what the true value is, but it'd be interesting to get some more solid numbers as to what the effects would be as this carries on. And then the other issue I have too is the government constantly changes what the credits are in relation to these panels too, and if we would have done this 10 years ago, we would have been really ahead of the game, whereas the credits nowadays are very minimal. But those are my comments, and I'll see what others have to say.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Through you to staff, do we know by the panels how much carbon we would capture?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Thompson, we can't measure the stuff we didn't use, but you can calculate it. There's a standard calculation for the energy that we produce.
So we don't have the numbers. And look, is there a difference in, like, on the roof to the ground, and not in a safety way, but do they not say it's better to have them on the roof for, I don't know if it's for birds, but I always remember solar panels being better placed on the roof.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Thompson, so in many cases it's better to put it on the roof just because it's higher up and it's out of the way and you don't have any shadowing, shading. The Emergency Services Campus is a big site, and you've got a very good view of the southern sky. So that's part of the reason. The original scope was to put it on the roof because that's where we put the roof mounts, because that's kind of the general consensus, you put it on the roof. When the consultants came back, they said, listen, you can put it out in the backyard here because you've got space. There's a naturalized area. It's kind of a good location for it. We're not doing anything with it anyways. So why don't we put it there? And someday in the future, if there's a need to build on that space, we can always move it around. You can pick it up and move it.
So maybe just more of a comment. So this is kind of like, from the last year's budget, and I just look at everything and I like the out of the thinking, and I really want to see more of this, but I think if we could have moved a little bit quicker on the carbon capture, there's an opportunity for more monetary gain for the city. Yes, the city sends over a bill to the campus, whether it be the county or the police, which is a line item. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the ask for the hydro for 2024 is about $253,000 to the police side of it. But really it comes down to dollars and cents to me. And I think this is a great initiative, but I look at how our budget is right now. And these are great initiatives and great things to do, if you run out of things to do and you got lots of money and the government's forcing you to spend your reserves and all that stuff. And right now, I don't think we're in the position to keep with the capital accounts. I just think that these are things that we're going to have to look at, and, you know, maybe putting it as a forecast for a year. If we could get maybe, you know, involved in the carbon capture, we could look at it more, you know, as a quicker return on our investment. But like right now, from everything I've heard around the table, I will be supporting this amendment.
Councillor Corser.
I guess just to follow up on Deputy Mayor Thompson's question, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Mr. Pugh, I guess, staff. What is how do we go about getting this carbon capture number? Can we capture that going forward? Is it a calendar based? I'm just not understanding we've missed the carbon capture. Can you maybe explain that a little bit to me?
Mr. Hughes.
So I think if I'm, through you, Your Worship, I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're wondering how we calculate how much carbon we're offsetting. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is, but there's per every megawatt hour, or every megawatt of power that's produced, there's an equivalent CO2, a carbon amount. It's a direct calculation, you know, because we know what the Ontario grid, how efficient it is and how much carbon it burns per kilowatt hour, megawatt hour. So it really is as simple as looking at your hydro bill. We use this much power, therefore, or we save this much power in the case of solar panels. So we've installed a bunch of solar panels, we've generated a bunch of power, therefore it wasn't generated, you know, to Bruce or someplace, well, Bruce is probably a bad example, but, you know, someplace else from natural gas, therefore our savings is X.
Moving forward, we install these, then at that point forward, we would be saving on carbon capture, correct? So
through Your Worship, we wouldn't be generating, we wouldn't be using carbon sourced power. So that would be a carbon credit that would come to the city. Or more correctly would be a credit that's available for the city to use for something.
okay, is this carbon, has this changed in the last year or two, or is it still the same amount it has been? Has it fluctuated at all? Does it fluctuate with the market at all?
Through Your Worship. So it is a market, so it does fluctuate with time. It will go up, I'm sure. Over the course of time, it's like anything, you know, supply and demand, right? So the higher the demand gets, and I think over the course of time, a lot of organizations, governments have said we're going to be net zero by 2050 or 2040, whatever that is. If they can't actually do what they need to do through technology, they're going to buy those credits. So they're going to have to go to somebody that's already generated those credits some other way and said, well, we didn't do it on our own, but here's our wallet, here's our cash, we're going to buy the extra ones that you guys made.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Hamilton, I forgot that you'd put
No, that's okay, and thank you, and through you. And thank you to Mr. Hughes for supplying the additional information today. It did shed more light on it for sure. I was surprised at the difference in numbers and why all of a sudden those numbers came to fruition. But it raised a bit more skepticism in me, or a bit more questions. So in terms of warranties, are there any warranties that come with the panels, or is there ongoing or annual maintenance that needs to be done, replacement costs for inverters and whatnot? What does that look like?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Hamilton. So there are warranties. The warranties on solar panels are typically quite good because there's nothing to them. There's no moving parts. They don't do anything. And I think a standard warranty wouldn't be an issue to get a 10-year warranty. You could probably negotiate a better warranty if you wanted. As for maintenance, probably the biggest maintenance cost is washing the things every now and then. You know, they work if you don't wash them, but I have some at home, and I tell you they work better when you do wash them. So, you know, that's something that we'd want to do, and frankly, that's an area where ground mounted is actually easier because, you know, then you don't have to go up on the roof and trip over stuff. You know, there are inverters, that sort of thing. They do have a lifespan, but they're not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. It's the panels themselves that are really expensive.
Okay. And in terms of, sorry, through you again, in terms of the degradation rate, does that change based on the new panels that we're using, the ground ones instead, or is it basically the same, or what does that look like?
Through your worship, they're basically the same panels.
The same.
They're just sitting on a steel stand, and they either move or they're fixed depending on the design, as opposed to being sit on a stand that's on the roof.
Okay, so the degradation, whew, it's a doozy. What is the rate?
I can't tell you, and it'll all depend on the panel. They're all, a different manufacturer is going to be different. They're all very good. Maybe not all. There's probably some that we likely wouldn't buy that look great on paper, but there's a reason we wouldn't buy them, and I wouldn't recommend them. But I think for any of the quality units, they're all going to be fairly close to their rated output. They'll probably actually exceed the rated output, given the appropriate amount of sunshine, and none of us control Mother Nature, right? So that's the wild card here. But assuming you've got design conditions, you're likely going to exceed those design parameters, through whatever the manufacturer's rated life is. So, some manufacturers might be 20. Typically, it's 25. Could be 30. I've seen some that are more. I don't believe it, frankly, but I can't tell you what it is after that. But the manufacturer should be able to tell you that.
Okay. And so we're confident, because again, the ROI changed significantly for me. So I just want to make sure that this new return on investment that we're speaking of, that we are actually recouping our costs, because the upfront cost is significant. It does take into consideration maintenance, even though it's small, cleaning of it, the inverter replacement every 10 years, the degradation costs. I'm a bit nervous just because of the change in numbers that we're portraying an accurate picture here of what we can expect going forward.
Through your worship, yeah, we are. I mean, the whether it's ground mount or roof mount, the inverters, all of that is still the same. It didn't change. It's the same inverter, very similar inverter depending on the actual panel you install. We're not saying we're going to put inverter X. We're saying this is what we need. We need this much output. It's going to be a 500 kilowatt system, and the engineers will spec something. They're not going to say you're going to buy model X, because we're not allowed to do that under our procurement bylaws. But we'll set the standard performance, and then the market will provide something that meets those requirements.
I'm going to go to Councillor Morales, and then I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Thompson, and I'm going to go to Councillor Harvey.
Very quick. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Mayor Nuttall, I will be supporting this. I will be supporting the original staff ask, and here's why. So based on everything I've heard, yes, there was a number in ROI, whatever, in the binder. Yes, there was a 4:27 p.m. one. And now we have a lot more information. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Hamilton and everyone else that Mr. Pughes has given us. And between all of that together, my gut, I really trust Mr. Pughes. And for members who are, it doesn't mean, it's not ranking staff against each other, but for members who might be new, time and time again, Mr. Pughes has just been blunt, direct, and to the point with questions. In my experience, he doesn't sugarcoat things. He doesn't give a theoretical best case scenario. There's been times where I expected a politically correct answer, and he gave me a very blunt answer. And I appreciate blunt answers. And so if Mr. Pughes is telling me, yeah, we updated the numbers, we were being this conservative. There was one other question I think a colleague of mine asked, and he said, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And he's not the only staff to ever say, I'll get back to you, but in my prior experience, if all I have to go based off is the binder, the 4:27 p.m. email, and the assurances from Mr. Pughes now, he can't control, the batch that we get of solar panels, he can't control Mother Nature, and he can't control other unpredictable factors, but based on the data sets information, I'm being asked, at least for myself, to make a calculated decision, and I have a lot of trust with Mr. Pughes, and no pressure, no undue pressure, and so I'll be voting against the amendment, but in support of the original motion.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So one question I want to ask. So the new consultant said that the return on investment went from 80,000 to 100,000 because we went from ceiling mounts to in the backfield. Is that correct?
Through your worship, from my understanding, it's due to the orientation of the panel. I assume the original designers, and again, I'll have to get into the details if you need this, but I believe the original designers planned to have something that was, it'll be southern facing, but it would not be at the same angle, whereas a ground mounted one, you could, you put it up at quite an angle if that's what you need to get the best capture.
So the original intake form was for a roof mount, is that correct?
Correct.
So the return on the investment went from 80,000 to 100,000. So hydro comes in from the road, the building is against the road, the panels will now be at the back 40, the inverter will be there as well. It's about $25,000 a foot to run cable back. We got to bring the power this way. So the ROI changed on the profit, but the intake form never represented it to bring the power back. So the install, the ask of 1.2, never changed, but the investment changed because of where you're placing them. But it costs more money to run hydro back to the street to put it back in the grid. So how does that work?
Through your worship, we're not actually we're not sending the power back to hydro. We're using the power in the building. So we're basically offsetting the power that we're using in the building. This is only a 500 kilowatt system.
It still has to get back, though.
Correct, but we're on our side of the meter.
No, I understand, but you still have to run it from the back parking lot, which you said the campus is a very large property. So you're going to have to dig a trench, run a cable to bring it back to the building to use. But that didn't change in the initial purchase. But where you're placing them changed the profit.
No, sorry, through your worship, I think I see what you're saying. I will dig into the actual consultant's cost. My understanding is the power is actually running into Building C, which is the garage building. So we've already got a pathway from the main building into Building C. So you're right, there will be an underground trench, but it'll go from Building C as opposed to from the main building.
And then restorations of the parking lot and all that other stuff. But so, look, we get different information and stuff. And look, I'll use, CAO process. This isn't a game show and it isn't about gotcha. So I'm not trying to do that. It's just, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit frustrated because, because I respect Mr. Miller's not feeling well. I'd love to ask, this is coming out of the capital reserve. And the account is struggling right now, and we're forecasting a lot of, or we're asking for a lot of money. When money's committed, it represents, and I have a few other motions due to that, but this is the stuff that can affect your ratings. And we're at a AA rating, if that's correct. When you have too much strain on your capital budget, when they come in and do our audit, it actually could downgrade us. Because once the money is allocated to a project, it can't be used for anything else, and it actually affects your ratings. So I think a compromise, and to the mover of the motion, if we could defer this by 1 year, we hopefully can get into the carbon capture business, which will be able to, the ROI will be a lot quicker, in that sense, and, we can look at, so as a friendly, I'm asking to add maybe just, would it be called a forecast of 1 year or just a deferral of 1 year?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, I think you want to change it from an ask to a forecast, which means it's not approved to be spent, but it's there as a placeholder. If you wanted to defer it for a year, you'd want to put it in 2025.
And maybe we can have a deeper dive into, a lot of questions and a good conversation. Like I said, I think the thinking out of the box is great. I know that we're getting solar panels on the new Ann Street, and they're going to be positioned on the water reservoir on the top of the hill and stuff. So this is something, we're moving forward with. But I just think that we should have every possible opportunity on a return on our investment. And I think by deferring it 1 year, hopefully things work out with that, or we're into a program one way or another. And I think we get a quicker return on our investment.
So Deputy Mayor, that's an amendment?
Well, it's general, so it's a friendly, just to...
Is it a friendly?
Oh, an amendment.
Well, it's a friendly if Councillor Hamilton says yes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a friendly amendment to essentially forecast it out for 2025, and to get all of these questions answered in between. Any other questions or comments to that? Councillor Kungl.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, just to staff, if I may redirect to either Mr. Miller or Mr. Pughes, so impact of deferring to the project if we don't maybe fully appreciate what a delay in 1 year would do to current state of where you're at in the initiative.
Through your worship to Councillor Kungl, I mean, we still have to finish the design. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to be issuing a PO tomorrow. You know, the reality is inflation, right? So construction inflation, it will be more expensive. But another year of technology, maybe the technology will come down in price. I don't know. There will be an impact, but I can't say what it is, and it's probably not that significant.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'll definitely support this 1 year deferral, and like, I mean, I'll be quite honest with you, even 2 years might even be better, but I'll leave it at 1, because I think too, the one piece that we don't want to be missing out on is the carbon credits when the city does start capturing the true numbers of our carbon footprint and using things like this as a credit. And I think that'll probably more than make up for any differential from year to year when it comes to that, because we're hearing crazy numbers from some other municipalities without mentioning them. So I definitely will support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of the 1 year? And it carries. Councillor Hamilton.
All right, here we go again. Next, to add the following to paragraph 9, that the Heritage Park Capital Project 001126 on page 53 be reduced from 11.6 million funded from the tax capital reserve to 2.6 million allocated each year as follows. 2024 0, 2025 866 666, 2026 866 666, and 2027 866 666, with the additional 9 million being allocated as forecasted funding for 2028 and beyond. And again, happy to speak to that.
Go ahead, Councillor.
This one in particular, you know, Heritage Park, I frequent Heritage Park often. I run down there, I bike down there, I swim down on the waterfront, I take my kids down there, so I understand it being a popular place to be, and we need to make sure that we invest in it and keep it well maintained and available for use by residents. For me, the biggest one here is the splash pad. I do think the splash pad right now is a bit of a liability. It's basically a slab of concrete for kids to be playing and running around in water. So when I spoke to staff about the capital project, I asked how much it would cost just to redo the splash pad, and that amount came back as 2.6 million. So for me, that's the priority, to get that done. The rest of the project, in terms of the capital needs that are needed at Heritage Park, are not, in my opinion, as much as a priority at this time. I think that space is well utilized as is, and I also think there's a lot of work we need to be doing to clean up the downtown and surrounding areas, to be quite honest and frank with you. I mean, I avoid Heritage Park sometimes with my kids for reasons such as open drug use. So again, until I think we take care of some of these other systemic issues and come up with plausible solutions, I would like to just hold off on any further work done at Heritage Park. And so I've put it here as being forecasted funding for 2028 and beyond, and just take care of the immediate need, which is the splash pad in the amount of 2.6 million.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Corser.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I will be supporting this. I just had a question from staff, because, and Councillor Harvey, you'll probably love that I say this, but in 2019 they had a chap that brought up a splash pad at the Peggy Hill, and I believe the price was a 700 to 800,000 at that time. Could staff explain, like, is it because there's an existing one there, or would be the removal and then a full install?
You can come down.
Sorry, please, please come down to the microphone, because if anyone's watching, it's not fair to them.
Sorry.
Mr. Bradley.
Through Mayor Nuttall to Deputy Mayor Thompson. We're talking about two very different things. This will be a much significant, larger installation, different types of interactive lighting, different types of features. It's as much an art feature as it is going to be a splash pad. Part of it is the demolition costs. The estimate off the top of my head from the master plan was $1.5 million that council approved just for the splash pad itself. That doesn't include any of the servicing that we need to upgrade at the same time.
So maybe a follow-up, will it be nicer than the one in Ward 5?
Yes, I think yes.
Councillor Corser.
Just a quick question about this. Was there, I'm trying to find it now, but I thought I saw something tied to this about AODA standards, accessibility standards. I'm sorry, yeah, but I thought that I'd read something. I could be wrong. I'm sorry, this is just tough. I'm not sure who this would be going to at this time of night. I could be wrong, so if I am wrong, then I will revoke my question, but there wasn't anything tied to AODA with this. Mr. Riley. Mr. Come on down.
Excuse me. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Corser. Yes, there will be inclusive design elements as part of this installation that are not there today. Again, sensory improvements, different types of things that children can interact with differently.
Okay, so these are improvements, AOD improvements that are not currently at the park. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corser. Are there any other questions or comments? I'm really happy with the splash pad going. To put it in perspective, I played there as a kid, and I don't think it's changed. I don't think there's been any improvement there whatsoever. So I am very happy seeing that go, and also at the same time having a fiscally, I think, responsible approach to the needs versus the wants. So I'll certainly be supporting it. So all those in favor of the amendment, and it carries. Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry, only two more here to go. And through you, Mayor Nuttall. This is the Painswick Park parking lot. So the capital project FC 1085, Hewitt's Community Center, page 90, land acquisition design be reduced by $600,000 in 2024, funded from cash in lieu of parkland, with the $600,000 being added to existing capital project EN 1182, Painswick Park rehabilitation in 2024, to be funded from cash in lieu of parkland for the reconstruction of the Painswick parking lot. Again, happy to speak to that. I think we've actually had a number of discussions about the Painswick parking lot from an accessibility standpoint, a safety standpoint, given the park upgrade that we all are well aware of now, and some of the issues with that lower lot not being paved from an accessibility, and I think I sent pictures last time as well of a number of divots and just the maintenance of it. So I was told that yes, we see this as a priority, but you need to find the funds. Well, we went ahead and we found the funds to allocate for this. I know there was one question in terms of, why is this taking a priority over perhaps Sunnydale Park? And I did check that Sunnydale Park, the pavement of that lot is actually already in queue to be done in 2024, because I was going to suggest that we could take additional funds to pay for that as well, but it wasn't necessary. So this is just to pay for the Painswick lot, knowing that Sunnydale is in line this year as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just, I will support the amendment. Just wanted to be clear, just so those watching know, we have a wonderful new park with lots of accessible amenities. Just wanted to be clear, the park currently and the parking around it meets AODA standards as it sits. Is that correct? Maybe for you to Mr. Ranasandran?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. So, but I will support the amendment. I think it's nice to have this finished, but I just wanted to, for those who are watching, we are meeting standards with our new park, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So I struggle with this one, big time. I got to be honest with you. My first year on council, somebody tried to move something up kind of in the priority list, and it was kind of said that you don't do that. It sets bad precedent and stuff. And we have received numerous emails from residents. And I will say the last one, and I won't mention any names or anything, but it was about dropping off at school and parking there to pick up from school. And I know there's been so many conversations around this table about schools not abiding by their site plan approval, putting all the liability on the city, and now it looks like we're giving in to the school. We're paving a parking lot to parks that'll be closed in the winter, but we're going to pave it so the school doesn't have to use their kiss and ride or drop off areas. We're going to use our resources to do that. And, you know, there's also this cost, and then there'll be an operating cost to plow the lot that they probably wouldn't have plowed if it was gravel. And all that said, I will support the amendment only because this is an anomaly. It's a fully accessible park. And, you know, for that reason, look, it's just, it's so, like, it's tough for me. But like I said, I will support it. You know, taking the funded from the Hewitts, like, you know, we're going to build a rec center for $120 million. You know, if we get near the end and we're 600,000, we're not stopping, you know? So, like, I think that's, and look, I appreciate the work that Councillor Hamilton's done and, you know, advocating for this. But, you know, I was the chair, or, sorry, I was part of the committee of the accessibility last term. And I know the challenges, and I understand them. And, you know, my wife had an uncle, and, you know, I spent lots of time with him and witnessed it. And, like I said, I don't want this to be precedent setting. You know, this shouldn't be something council does. You know, it can look populism or whatever. We should stick to the plans that our staff put in front. But I don't believe this one is that. I actually believe that because of the anomaly and how beautiful the park is, that this is actually allowing the park's full utilization. And I still think we should close it off for the school, but we can pave the parking lot.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other? Oh, Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Yeah, just further to Deputy Thompson's comments. Normally, I would be kind of against this too, saying that you know, there's a lot of things we could do better, but you are correct. It is a bit of an anomaly, not just because it's fully accessible, but because the majority of the costs were paid for by the very generous sponsor. So basically what we're looking at is just kind of completing it and just kind of making it right. It's like, you know, somebody gave us a car, but we got to buy the snow tires. You know, like, it's not, you know, it's just, it just puts it to rest. It's complete, it's finished, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good analogy. Councillor Harvey.
So I really struggle with this one too, because it does set a bad precedence no matter which way you look at it. I get the fact that there's some concerns about the lower half being gravel, but the fact that the upper half is paved, has fully accessible spots, probably definitely needs more fully accessible spots added up in that upper half. If we were talking about a totally unpaved parking lot, I'd be swaying the other way. But the fact that half of the lot is paved, it's all within the guidelines of being fully accessible, probably not as accessible as some people would like it. But especially when you look at, and I know Deputy Mayor Thompson brought it up, back in 2019, the online portal on our city's website triggered 500 hits where people were asking for a splash pad in the Holly area, and that's not just a Ward 7 thing, that's a Ward 6 thing. And here we are in 2024, and there's no splash pad. That same property right beside the basketball court has a flat spot that's been allocated for tennis courts when it was built. Here we are in 2024, or close to 2024, and there's no tennis courts. Does that mean that I'm now going to take 600,000+ out of the Salem Rec Center? Because, as it was mentioned by Deputy Mayor Thompson, you're building a rec center regardless. You're not stopping if all of a sudden you're 600 grand or even $1 million short. Like, you got to complete the project. So that's where I really struggle, because it does set a bad precedent, and potentially creates the flow for others to do the same. And when we do it for one, how can you fault someone else for wanting to accomplish the same thing for their residents? And we were elected to look at things globally opposed to just looking at things in our own ward. And I get that they want to ensure that their area is complete, but I think there's a little bit of looking after our own backyards built into this too, which could also be the reason why they're wanting to do what they do. But I really struggle taking 600 grand out of a community center when we know they're not taking 600 grand out of a community center. That community center is getting built either way. So I just can't support this, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor, for your comments. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I support this motion. The reason why I support is this specific issue came from the Senior and Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I found it's very important, and it's a good way to invest, and I support that.
Thank you, Councillor Negussi. Any other questions or comments? For me, I struggle with this in a bunch of different ways, and there's a lot of good comments here tonight with regards to making sure that there's a fair process. I think Councillor Kungl alluded to that last week or the week before. I can't remember. The weeks are blurring together as well. And I have never subscribed to the, if it's not in the capital plan, it can't be added into the capital plan. I've never subscribed to the capital plan as the capital plan is capital plan, because if the capital plan is capital plan is capital plan, then we don't need to have a debate on the capital plan, because it just is in concrete. Staff aren't bringing anything new forward to us because they set the capital plan. So the idea that we can't maneuver, and I would actually use the word prioritize, projects in wards is one I just do not subscribe to. I didn't subscribe to it in Ward 10. I failed on a lot of votes. The CAO will be able to tell you, trying to prioritize Ward 10, which my colleagues at that point affectionately referred to as the Quebec of Barrie. And we worked very, 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 very hard. That's true, isn't it? It is true. I believe it was our former deputy mayor who coined that one. I worked very hard to get items added in, and sometimes they were taken in, and 9 out of 10 times they weren't. And so I guess the conversation that we actually need to have after this budget is how we deal with that going forward. And I'm certainly open to that conversation. I think that it's one we should have, and maybe the answer is that we get back to the exact same place we are. But for me, when I look at this, I'm probably a little upset that we didn't deal with it up front when the park was done. I think it's 7 and change that's being invested there. If it was 7.1 million or 7.5 million or whatever at the time, we probably would have been like, add the $400,000, right? It's only because it wasn't done that now it's become an issue, which then just therefore highlights back to the original piece, which is do the thing. Secondly, or maybe it's thirdly, I've lost track of my comments here, it's getting late. I really do struggle when it comes to items affecting individuals with disabilities. And, you know, I grew up down the road from this park, but it wouldn't matter whether it was this one or Sunnydale or any other. I grew up with a mother who was disabled, who struggled through taking me places, and I really do sit back and go, what would the effect been on me and my mother, because we were in that situation, getting to that park, walking because we didn't have a car. And I really struggled through this because I didn't want to, I didn't want to support this. I actually fought it at committee, I think 3 weeks ago. And I've come to the conclusion that it just makes sense. So I think the grander conversation that members of council, Councillor Harvey for Ward 7, you've mentioned,
Deputy Mayor's mentioned, is one that we need to have over the next 12 months on what the priorities for the city are, what the priorities in the wards are, et cetera. The final question I have on this one is, because I fully subscribe to what Deputy Mayor Thompson's saying, is like, we're not going to not open because of 600 grand. So we're going to, it's kind of a fake removal. Except, I thought that we put money aside already for the purchase of land. And I could be completely wrong. And maybe it was just forecasted out. But, Ms. McAlpine, did we or didn't we put money aside for the purchase of land for the 2023 budget?
Mayor Nuttall, thank you for the question. The money was forecasted. It wasn't actually included in the budget. And as you may be aware, the actual forecast on the timing for the Hewitt's Community Center has been moved more than once.
100%. We got it approved when I was a councillor there. So my final on this is that $39 million for land is unacceptable. I have supported this, as I just said, for 15, 20, it's probably going on 20 years. I think I literally ran on this in 2003 to get a rec center done. That's how effective I was. $40 million for land is nuts. It's absolutely bonkers. So I really, really hope we find something that's not $40 million bucks for land. I hope we are able to find a solution that is much lower, and then the $600,000 will actually be a saving that's been found. That's it for me. Any other follow-up questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? It carries. I believe there's one more, Councillor Hamilton.
There is my last one. I may be pushing my luck here. To add the following to paragraph 9, that capital project FC 1139, City Hall redevelopment on page 79 in the amount of $1,847 million from tax capital reserve be reduced to $1 million for 2024 and reduce the annual funding to $1 million each year, extending the project to 2028 to accommodate the reduced annual contributions for a total new funding of $5 million out to 2028. And again, I can speak to that. Okay, I'll go ahead. I just, first of all, I don't think we said thank you tonight for all the work on the budget, just in terms of the questions for the past week. So, Mr. Miller, I had no idea that you were feeling under the weather, and I know you've been inundated with a plethora of questions. So just a sincere appreciation to you and the rest of staff for getting answers back to us in a timely manner. I know there was a heck of a lot of work done, so I hope you're feeling better after this. And I will just say, going through all of this, I heard comments about putting forward amendments and thinking of our own backyards, and I'll just say I approached these binders really with the lens of anything that impacted the tax levy, how was it going to impact our residents? So how was it going to impact, the improvement or maintenance of services, how it was going to impact accessibility or the movement around our city, how it was going to impact their safety, how it was going to impact our affordability. Those were directly aligned to our strategic plan. So that was the lens I took. And again, for this last amendment here, when we're talking about City Hall redevelopment, I took the exact same lens. So I understand growth in city staff. I understand originally we were looking at a whole expansion of City Hall to accommodate the growth in staff, and staff realized, the costs associated that was probably not feasible or realistic, and made some pretty significant changes and put forward a more cost-effective approach in terms of just making a redevelopment here rather than a whole expansion. So I applaud staff efforts in that front. I know through COVID too, we've got staff working from home, and I think we've got a hybrid work environment still going on today. We've got about 200 or so staff working from home. So glad to see, staff working with those accommodations and working with the restrictions right now at City Hall. My issue with the intake form as presented is we're spending a lot of upfront money on the outset in 2024 on the backs of taxpayers. So it was about just over $2 million over 2024 to be used for some of the redevelopment costs. And what I'm proposing is just to spread it out over another year. So the overall project funding is pretty much the same, but it's only $1 million each year spread over an additional year in 2028. And again, I'm just looking at the lens of a taxpayer, as I said, in line with our strategic plan. I thought Communications did a great job with a survey as well that they put out in terms of trying to understand what's important to residents right now. I went through that, great job. I think it really gives us insight as to what's top of mind for residents. I did that same poll in my ward online, and again, the number one thing that came back in terms of what the most significant issue facing Barrie is right now was cost of living. So as we're sitting around the table, you know, it looks like we're fighting dollars and cents on this. We have to think the average person right now is trying to figure out how to put food on the table, how to figure out how to pay their mortgage. I'm on a variable rate, I'm struggling. So, I mean, this is the reality I think we have to put everything into perspective about. So I understand the work that needs to be done here, and I'm not trying to disrespect staff or your workspaces by any means. I get it. My own work environment, we're looking at cutting down office space and trying to figure out ways to pay bills. So at the end of the day, I think first and foremost, we have to be thinking about what is the bottom line and what is the net effect to residents. So that's why I'm putting this one forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Through you to the CAO or any staff that he feels is best appropriate. Now, with the amendment and the funding of just $1 million for this year, because I believe off the top of my head the chart showed 2 point something for this particular fiscal year. And I know one of the issues that you have to address is some security issues that have arisen. And I know when I first became a councillor, I was quite surprised at how open this building is. So I'm not surprised that these security issues have now come to the forefront. Can you actually even accomplish what you need to accomplish this year with $1 million? Because I think the safety issues are probably priority number one, I would suspect.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, as the saying goes, $1 million isn't what it used to be. I would offer to Council that Councillor Hamilton and I did have a brief discussion before Council. This amendment I would describe as relatively sort of late breaking today, so the facility staff haven't really had an opportunity to detail what work wouldn't get completed with a reduction of about $800,000, I think is the sort of net of it. And my comment to Councillor Hamilton was, if Council is interested in this and passes this tonight, in the interim, we'll provide you with a memo that will outline the impact of that. We believe there will still be the money we require for the security features, but there are some larger projects we just might not be able to start because we don't have enough funding in that first year. And we'd like to be able to provide that detail to Council. We haven't been able to put it together in the last few hours. So if Council decides to take up this cause tonight, we'll certainly get you additional detail in the next 7 days.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, I mean, again, it's Councillor Hamilton's amendment. This might be another one that we should probably hold off to Council to have a fulsome discussion, although you can only speak once at Council, but seems to be a lot of information that we really don't have to be able to make an appropriate decision tonight, because I do have some concerns with reducing it, especially this year. And also, too, when you look at the big picture, because I remember it was 2 councils ago, and that's when I was the geek watching City Council on TV and watching the big debate about a second tower being built. Well, there you go, Deputy Mayor. Being built in the parking lot, and I believe the figure was north of $100 million. And I remember Councillor Ainsworth of the day kind of expressing her concerns about the costs there and stuff. And obviously now that things have dramatically changed with the pandemic and hybrid workforce and stuff, all of a sudden we don't need that second tower, at least any time in the near future. And like, I mean, this is an extremely, where we're sitting is new, whereas that tower that staff work out of is extremely old. And from what I understand, these floors that haven't been renovated yet don't even have insulation on the inside of the walls. So between that and the windows and everything. So there's a whole host of different issues, I think, when it comes to this particular decision. As it stands tonight, I definitely won't support it. I do welcome the additional information, but I'll leave it up to Councillor Hamilton as to what she wants to do with it tonight.
I'm happy to wait to get additional information if that would help everybody. And as I said, this was sort of a late introduction, and we had conversation minutes before this meeting started. I will just say, though, that there was prior funding already allocated. So by reducing it $147,000, they still have $2.322 million to spend in 2024. So I know $2.5 million still doesn't go a long ways, but it goes far enough for the first year in a project to do some pretty, as you, Councillor Harvey, pointed out, some pretty, basic and high priority needs. So, but it would be interesting to know what couldn't get done over the course of the 24 year. So I'm fine with. I can just hold off on this maybe completely to get the information, and we can bring it back next week. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Corser.
It's late, I know. It's okay. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, I guess I'll hit up CAO Prowse. There are several other things connected to this, and I'm really interested in seeing the details come back on this, because I know it's more than the security issue that is top of mind, of course, right now, and also actual safe workplace, like trip hazards, the carpeting, the flooring, as mentioned. There are several things that kind of popped out at me. So yeah, to have a more of a fulsome look at this to make sure that we are covering a safe and healthy workplace for our staff is of utmost importance to me, and I'm sure everyone else at the table. So if we could have a better understanding of what impact that has, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Just a comment, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and that has been withdrawn. So if you have other questions, members of council, please reach out to CAO Prowse in the next 24. We'll now move on to what's next. Is there any more there? Sorry, just before is there any more, Councillor Hamilton?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go over to Councillor Kungle, and we'll go from there.
I'd like to identify an amendment. So I think it's in reference to page 165 in the binders. It's specific to the capital plan labeled LTO4, stormwater repairs and retrofit. So what has recently come to my attention is that we don't have a budget assigned to a structural repair of a footbridge. So in particular, almost, I think it's gone back maybe 6 to 8 months this year, if I'm correct. The Stanley stormwater pond, so north of Hanmer, across from the dome, there's a fenced area. Behind that is a storm water pond, and around that is a heavy residential area to the west and east. It's a heavily used kind of green space. Page 165, I think, yeah. And so tied to that actually was an investigation by staff because that bridge has been out of commission, so that has not been an available regular pathway for residents as a high-use area. Instead of just a repair, it's come to my attention that that actually has some structural safety issues, so it actually needs to be fully replaced at a cost of $20,000. So as follows, my amendment is that the capital intake form LT04 stormwater repairs and retrofit is adjusted in 2024 to include $20,000 to enable the required replacement of the Stanley stormwater pond footbridge.
So there's a $20,000 addition on the table for a footbridge over Stanley Park.
Not the park, but it's stormwater pond. So if you map it, you'll see that that is a high traffic area that people usually are able to walk through and behind into a green space. And right in the middle of that pathway, the footbridge going over part of the pond is actually needs to be replaced. It's not a repair that was identified.
Okay, thank you. I just have a quick question. I remember Jack Garner trying to replace a footbridge at Donald Park. I think we quoted him $100,000 for that. Was that?
It was something.
It was. I'm just going on memory here. Is $20,000 sufficient for a bridge? Because that would be a good deal, and I just, yeah, we'll take 5 actually. Yeah.
Your Worship and members of the committee, it's a very small bridge. It was built by the developer. looks like it's a homemade bridge almost, but it doesn't meet any of our standards, so it needs to be replaced. The footings are gone as well, so that's why a little bit of an elevated cost. So as part of the project, you know, we're asking for an extra 20 just to replace that bridge.
The creek at Donald Park is like maybe 3 feet wide. And it was $100,000. Is this like is this a step?
It's a very small wooden bridge over a small pond. And as they're doing the capital work to retrofit the pond, it can be included with it as well. So there's work going on in the area as well, and this will just be at, you know, could be for materials and some footings.
I want to see the bridge happen. $20,000 ain't going to do it in my world. And if it does, I'm super excited. Like really, really, really excited. Like I want more of those. So yeah, I don't think $20,000 is the cost of it. We literally, and maybe we can pull it up, we literally had this conversation around this table, and I think the subsequent council did, because 2 members of the public went and tried to replace the bridge over at Donald Park themselves, and then that got shut down. Sam Kinsella and Jack Garner, and then that got shut down, and it was a $100,000 bridge for a 3-foot creek. Yes, Councillor.
Just to allow you to be in awe for another minute, I'll ask a question. Just the $20,000 then, I see it's coming from the tax capital reserve. If it is part of the storm pond, you know, maintenance, repair, retrofit, does that not just come from the stormwater capital reserve as well, or is that, sorry, through you to Mr. Millar?
Because it's a bridge, I would say no. Like that storm reserve's under a lot of pressure, but it's not actually a requirement of the stormwater infrastructure. It's a bridge over it. So that's why I wouldn't fund it from the storm.
So if it does go over, because what I just heard from Mr. Ferrari saying that, you know, the retrofit could put in the fittings or something, like maybe it's all part of one project. So if it was over $20,000, would that then be pulled from the stormwater capital reserve as part of the main project, or would that?
So it would just be 20,000, but it'd be funded from the tax capital reserve. Well, I'm saying it's not stormwaters, because that component of the infrastructure is not related to stormwater. It's like a passage over it, right? So if it was directly related to stormwater, they had to do it, I would say yes.
Okay. Mr. CEO.
It's an interesting evening, Mayor Nuttall. Business cases that are too good get rejected. Bridge prices that are too low get rejected. It's a very, very interesting council bizarro evening we're having. Mayor Nuttall,
to be fair, Mr. CEO, the rejection on the 5-minute before on one amendment was pulled back, and now the other 5-minute before has come off a little wonky too. So
yes,
I think it might have more to do with the timing of the questions and the information than anything else. But
that may be some of the, Mayor Nuttall. I was only going to offer, Ms. James Reed was very kind to pull up an article around the footbridge back in 2013. So $40,000 is what was quoted in the newspaper.
Okay.
Back in 2013. I think what Mr. Fryer was saying, and I'll just look to him for clarification, is we are doing a bunch of work in the area, and as part of that, for an additional $20,000, as part of the broader project, we can also get the bridge done, which I actually do think is a very good deal, and if he comes back and says it's higher, I think we can all hold him very accountable for that.
Yeah, I guess my concern is I think it's just dollars that are left over somewhere else end up going there, and it doesn't actually represent the true cost, to be honest. But I do like deals, so I don't know. I guess I would actually ask, Councillor, if you could do the same thing, withdraw this for next Wednesday. I want to, I'll commit publicly, for me, I want to support it, whether it's 20,000 or 40,000 or 60,000. What you're saying makes sense. Like it actually, but that's on the record. But it actually makes sense. You got a bridge that's fallen apart. It sounds like washed out or something, probably because of deterioration down the creek side. So if it needs to be fixed, it needs to be fixed. And so I can't speak for the rest of council, I fully commit to support that. I just think that it's a strikingly low bid.
Because this is a hot deal on the table.
I want to meet the workers who are doing this.
Does it expire? That's what I need to know. Does this expire?
Yeah.
3 days on this price and it's 80,000 next week.
Yeah, I can retract it for the sake of, getting close to 11 o'clock and allowing time. But I think Mr. Friery has been at investigating this area for quite an extensive period of time. And I thought the money for the bridge was already in the intake form. It's not. So I think it is going to be a pretty economical approach to it just because of the work being done. I was hoping it would be done this year. So happy to revisit it next Wednesday.
Perfect. And certainly look forward to all the information on that. Are there any other amendments for the capital budget portion? You have two? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Thompson?
Gary has one.
We'll go to Deputy Mayor Thompson, then we'll go across.
It's the following be added to paragraph 9, that capital project 00047 facilities forecast needs, page 86, 2024 budget request be reduced from $3,557,288 to $1 million, funded from the tax capital reserve, and that staff provide details in the 2025 budget process to explain the $42 million forecast over the next 10 years. And I can speak very brief, but most of my comments were made a little bit earlier.
Any questions or comments in relation to the amendment on the floor?
I'd like to hear you speak to it.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So this is basically a catch-all. If something goes wrong, a boiler or a coolant system or something, but once something is asked and received at council, it's off the books and it goes against us basically. And if it's not spent, it's not spent. So I don't ever want to leave staff short in case there's an emergency. I don't want a roof has a leak or something. We got to wait for council approval and all that. So I want to give them kind of a fund in an emergency case, a boiler or something like that. But I would love to see, and maybe to your point, Mayor Nuttall, about prioritizing our capital and not expanding to the point where it does become detrimental to our credit rating. So, and I really do want to thank Mr. Miller. I spent some time and I had some concerns, and I went through some stuff, and just because I'm a little bit worried about the tax capital reserve, because we are very there's pressures on it, and once it's on the books, it actually, like I said, it goes against us. So, for being here tonight and available for all the time and this morning, I really do appreciate it. But, so that's pretty much it. It's just to kind of reel it in a little bit, but make sure that there's enough there in case there's ever an emergency. And to be quite honest, it's out of the tax capital reserve. If there was ever a need after this million because of if we ever used 800,000 of this in an emergency, then staff would just come back to council and ask for more money in the tax capital reserve to be put into this fund.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions or comments with regards to this amount? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? It carries. Now, I think you have a second, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, this is to be added to paragraph 9.2. The capital project 001202 Operations Center redevelopment phase 2 implementation, page 100, be deferred by 1 year with the request spending changed to a forecast, and the project be prioritized as part of the 2025 capital budget process. And I'll speak really quick. Similar thing. There's 30 million in phase 1. I believe that it'll be tough to spend that on phase 1, but so this is in my ward, and I got to say, the work staff have done and been receptive. We've had some meetings. There was some issues, like second to none. Pleased a lot of residents with the redesign of certain things. But I know that there's a little bit of concern going forward that there might be some throwaway repairs but I believe that there'll be money in the first phase that will be able to accomplish that for 1 year. And, you know, not going back to Mayor Nuttall's comment, but I think we got to look at our capital budget a little bit thorough and just, that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Kungl.
I know you do your due diligence, but just want to give the floor to staff to comment on it, if I may. Mr. Arrhenius Enderin, would this be something in particular that you'd have a comment on around impact or opportunity to move this by a year?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungl, I would defer this to Ms. McAlpine.
Thank you. Through Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Kungl, certainly the building is 50 years old. There are components of it that are failing or have failed. We have done some of the work on phase 1 and we determined that if, as per an original thought that was out there, that if there was a deferral for 2 years, there would be about $5.025 million worth of work that would need to occur because of failing components. We have not looked at the 1 year, but it is likely to be slightly less than the 5.25. So at this point, we don't have an estimate of what work would need to be done, but there are a number of failing components in the building based on the timeline. Whether or not there will be any money left over in the first phase, I don't think we have that information at this point in time, but I would turn to Mr. Hughes if he wanted to add anything, if he felt there was some more detail on whether that money would be available.
Through your worship to members of committee, at this point I can't say whether there'd be money left over. With the work that we've got in phase 1, I suspect there won't be much if there is. You know, as for the deferral, if that's the will of council, that's what we'll do. But the reason that we have identified some risk, as Ms. McAlpine said, elements of this building are 50 years old. Some of them have failed. We've got rooftop units that are over 30 years old. They weren't high quality units to begin with. I'm surprised they're still running. Other components are even older. So, you know, there are some things that we've been deferring for a good 10 years already, perhaps more. So we're kind of up against the wall here, and that's why at a certain point we just have to start replacing things. You know, we can reuse as much as we can, but that's, as Ms. McAlpine said, there are some things that we really just need to get on with. So whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, some of the things we really should just be replacing so we don't have to shut things down.
So with respect to that, I won't support the amendment unless, Deputy Mayor Thompson, there's a different option you're thinking about, but for this evening at this moment in time, I won't be able to support
it. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. And I don't expect the answer tonight, and I just wanted to publicly say it, though, that I do look forward to getting some information before next week, so that way we can kind of fully understand what this throwaway money is going to be looking like and what type of issues we're dealing with, so that way we can make a better decision when it comes to next week. Because obviously I don't like $5 million throwaway, and I don't like $1 million either, but depending on what it is, I guess, like, I mean, that's where you got to weigh out the probabilities here, and obviously you want to make sure the place is still operational and safe is the big thing.
Deputy Mayor?
So in light of that, like, I'm okay to wait too for more information, but I think people need to be aware, as staff have, it's 50 years old. We can approve this budget and the components that they say fail will still fail, and you know, it's not gonna, because money's there to be used, it might not be enough, or like the building's 50 years old, it could be condemned tomorrow. If Corey stops by for a coffee, the fire might shut it down on us. So, like I said, I think I'm just trying to look at giving a little bit of taking the pressures off our capital reserve, right? And I'm trying to find ways that really aren't impactful. So yeah, I'll stop talking about it, and I'll just withdraw it, and hopefully staff can give us information and we can discuss it further next week.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any other amendments? There's one that was circulated by Councillor Harvey. He's going to wait till next Wednesday to bring it forth. And that's with regards to Marina project. Are there any other amendments this evening, folks? The length of this meeting brings me back circa 2014. And many of you circa, yeah, exactly. Yes. For some of us, it's not too soon, so that's why I made the joke. You know, thank you, members of council, for all of the work. More than anything, thanks to our public servants for all of the work. Much of the work that's done between the budget coming and us going over it is the worst type of work that you could have as a member of staff, in the sense that it's many times asking you to undo the work that you've done and reprioritizing. So thank you to our public servants for doing all of that work, for putting it in, for getting information. I think that it's a healthy, robust process that we've undertaken. Mr. Miller, you got any sort of idea for us on things, or?
So for the city operations component, you're sitting at 0.031%.
Okay.
And then there's the infrastructure investment fund sitting at 2%.
Okay, beautiful.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I couldn't hear over here.
It's 0.031% of an increase, correct?
For city operations, correct.
For city operations, and we have the 2% increase for our capital, which is no longer the DERF.
Yeah, that's right.
The artist formerly known as DERF. And I do want to highlight here, there's some big highlights, but I do want to highlight the staff came forward, our public servants came forward and eliminated $100 million out of their own capital plan to stop the addition of another building for City Hall, and have essentially, I believe, really given a very, very, very strong plan. We've made some changes, and there's other changes we'll probably make next week, but overall, this is incredibly strong, and that's supported by our credit rating. It's supported by all of the decisions that we're now falling in line with. And with all the changes that we talked about, which actually wasn't that many, there's about 150 times that we didn't touch, because it's just a strong plan. So again, thank you to our staff. I'll call the vote on it at this point, and we'll then deal with the rest at City Council next week. So all in favor of the 2024 budget as written? And that carries. Madam Clerk, I am so off of my notes. As amended, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking for notes. I see binders, there's stuff flying. Yep, there's like a shredder behind me going off. I don't know. There's the notes. So, Deputy Mayor had them. Oh, these are yours. Okay. So we're going to go into inquiries. Are there any inquiries of our public service? No. Are there any announcements around the table? No. I do have three. I apologize, folks. I have to. For the month of December, the city's Recreation and Culture team is offering a lineup of special holiday programming, drop-in activities, and events. The celebrations will include holiday parties, sports tournaments, festive cultural events, and of course, New Year's Eve. For a listing of planned events, visit barrie.ca/community events. I'm sorry, keeping you up, Deputy Mayor. Registration for the city's winter recreation and culture programming opens December 5th. Currently, residents can browse desired programs and save them to their wish list for when registration opens. To browse and register, please go to play.barrie.ca. Starting December 1st to March 31st, on-street
overnight parking will not be permitted between 3 and 6 a.m. within our downtown business improvement area and on other city streets between 12:01 and 7 a.m. Visit barrie.ca/snow for information about winter road maintenance. The Finance and Responsible Governance Committee and City Council meetings will be held December 6th, and we are now on to the circulation list. Are there any items for the circulation list? Deputy Mayor.
Actually, Mayor Nuttall, I remember you mentioning, and maybe I missed it. Did you add something to the circulation list that was captured?
Madam Clerk, have I now added that to the circulation list?
Yes, you have.
Wonderful. We have now. Any other items from the circulation list for members of council? Seeing none, I believe that brings us to adjournment. So we are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for all the hard work.
That was the update from the City Hall. Thank you for watching.